On today's show, how good is Trevor Connelly? We'll look at the 2024 NHL Draft prospect in detail on today's episode of Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hattie Kalikesh, Director of North American Scouting for Dobber Prospects, with Sebastian High as my co-host here, Director of European Scouting and Head Scout for Dobber Prospects. And today, we'll be looking at Trevor Connelly in detail. We'll put the prospect spotlight on him for today's episode. We'll look at the puck skills, first and foremost, skating, as well in our first segment. Then in our second segment, we'll look at the more mental stuff, more intricate stuff, the toolkit, the habits, the decision making. And then in our final segment, we'll look at the projection, the upside, and which team would be the best fit for Trevor Connelly in the 2024 NHL Draft. But before getting to any of that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment letting us know what you want us to talk about next. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, make sure to make us your first listen of the day. So let's get things started here with Trevor Connelly. Let's talk first and foremost about the profile, what type of player he is, size, handedness, team he plays for, all that good stuff. Talk me through it, Sebastian.
Yeah, for sure. So Trevor Connelly is a dynamic 6'1", 161-pound left shot left winger who's been playing this season with the Tri-City Storm in the USHL. He's a February 28th, 06 birthday, so pretty average age for the draft class. And with him, the offense is the name of the game. He has put up 31 goals and 78 points through 52 USHL games so far this season, also logging a pretty impressive 88 penalty minutes through that span. So he is an offensive dynamo through and through. And he's a fascinating prospect who is just constantly creating with the puck on his stick. So the puck skills, this segment is going to be a glaring strength as a whole.
Absolutely. And let's get things started right away with the stick handling ability. For me, it's really amazing. I mean, the way he uses the stick handling in transition is absurd. He's able to get around USHL defenses with little to no forethought or energy just because of how good his handling is in isolation, right? Like, he's just so good at shifting defenses, so good at kind of faking an outside drive and then catching a defenseman with his feet planted and just kind of moving inside and finding space in the middle of the ice. But he's also really good. I mean, you see a lot of him cutting away from defenses, cutting towards the outside. It's good in terms of his ability to do it. Is it a good habit? I'm not too sure. We'll get into that in our second segment a bit further. But overall, the handling ability in isolation is ridiculous. He's always carrying pucks in his hip pocket. He's ready to fire or pass or handle, all within the same posture, the same position, which makes him really dynamic and really unpredictable in transition. You never really know what he's going to do. So for me, the handling skill ranks pretty highly. I'd give it a 7. It's a well above average NHL tool in terms of its projection, especially if he improves his habits, improves his decision-making in transition. You can see that become a really high-end tool at the NHL level. But what do you think about his shot? I mean, his shot, he has 31 goals this season in 52 games. Like, there has to be something there, right?
Definitely. And I mean, like, heading into this season, he was primarily a goal scorer, really. And the playmaking game has just rocketed up. And I think it's a stronger facet than the goal scoring is at this stage. But again, these are all very much plus level tools. Like, I'd probably grade the handling at like a 7.5, and the shot probably at least a 6.5 tool. It's a very strong one. It's not perhaps quite as elite as the others that we're talking about here, but his ability to rifle off shots from in tight, he can shoot with the puck very close to his body. He uses like defenders and his line mates as very effective screens. He times his shooting very well. And he has a really wicked, like a whippy release. Like he's a really strong shooter and definitely a threat to score from medium range. And yeah, like it is easily a plus level tool.
Yeah, for sure. His shot reminds me a bit of Phil Kessel's in terms of emotion. Like
Yeah.
there's a it's the same thing with Kessel where his stick is very kind of malleable and whippy, and that's what allows him to kind of generate so much power and motion in it. I feel like it's a bit of the same with Conley. Conley's shooting mechanics are a bit less, you know, they're less on point than Phil Kessel's for sure, but the way they create with their shot, the way that they use their stick is pretty much the same for me. I like the shot with Conley for sure. Yeah, I think 6.5 is on point for the shooting ability. Moving forward with the passing, and I think this is where the game has improved the most with Trevor Connelly. Like you said, what he would often do before this year was, especially last year, you would see him dangle through everybody, get to the low slot, and take a shot, and that would be where it ends. I still think he uses his passing as kind of an ends to a means rather than a way to build play incrementally. He's the type of player who's really just
Yes.
going to access the offensive zone and try to rifle off the pass cross ice for a tap and shot, right? But he's not the type of player who necessarily it kind of builds play with much forethought or and there's not much chess to his offensive game.
No.
But when he's passing, I mean, they're accurate. They're hard, crisp passes right on the tape. He's able to saucer them as well. He's able to make passes off the backhand pretty comfortably as well, which is especially useful when he's cutting inside the offensive zone and going to his offside. It's pretty useful to be able to pass on the backhand cross ice like he does. So passing for me gets a 6. Like I said, there's still some elements in his passing that I think are way too linear and way too point focused rather than trying to build play. But overall, I like the passing in terms of his raw ability to rifle off passes in any position from any spot in the ice. He can find a player at the near post. But yeah, regarding the skating though, I think this is where Conley stands out the most for me. Like the skating is pretty solid, right?
It's very strong. Like the way he's also able to just integrate all of his other puck skills into the way he moves is probably the reason why he is as dynamic as he is, and we'll really dig into
Yeah,
that in the next segment. But like even just in isolation, he's like what a 7 at minimum 7 grade skater. He moves around the ice
yeah,
effortlessly. He has like mechanically is a very strong skater. He gets low. He has pretty full stride extensions. Like just very solid as a whole with the way he moves around the ice. I've liked the way he's become a lot more explosive in his first 2 steps over the course of the season. He's definitely done some strength training to improve that facet of the game. He can really gain separation from opponents and has that separating burst of speed at the USHL level. We'll see how that translates to college hockey,
yeah,
but at the time being, it is a very clear strength, and it allows his entire offensive game to tick because it's just yet another plus level tool, but it affords him time and space to create at a very high end level and gives a lot of breathing room for his puck skills to just go full overdrive mode and just execute some just ridiculously high end plays on a pretty like incessant basis throughout the season.
yeah. And I think that I think overdrive mode is the word, right? With Trevor Conley, there's often moments where he gets the puck and it's just like he's like shot out of a cannon. This moment he gets it, and we'll get into why that is and why that's so effective in this game in just a second. We'll talk about the toolkit, so how his tools interact. We'll talk about the habits with Trevor Conley, the decision making elements in his game on the ice, and a lot more here in our second segment right after these messages from our sponsors over at FanDuel.
It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's 150 bucks, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. Whether you want to go for a single game parlay like I always enjoy, which just makes the action all the more exciting, or you can take your luck on some spreads. The choice is yours with FanDuel. What are you waiting for? Visit fanduel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Alrighty, so moving on to our second segment, we'll be looking at the kind of more mental elements, more intricate elements in Trevor Connelly's game. The dynamic winger from the Tri-City Storm has some decent puck skills, as we reviewed in our first segment, but I think this is where we'll have a bit more questions with Connelly, and this is mainly why he's outside of most top 10s, even though the skill is off the charts and ridiculous, right? So we can start with the toolkit, and I think this is, we can talk about the combination of skating and skill. Like, this is where I think Trevor Connelly's game shines the most. He's a good skater in isolation. He's a good stick handler in isolation and a good passer and shooter. But it's a lot more important at the NHL level to be able to combine those tools into an effective toolkit. And I think Trevor Connelly's really good at that. So we can look at this combination of skating and stick handling first and foremost. I mean, it is off the charts. There's a reason why we named him the best, the most dynamic player in our last episode where we rebuilt our perfect prospect. Trevor Connelly was our guy for dynamism, and dynamism really, if you translate it pretty well, it's the ability to combine your skating with your tools and use that as a tool in and of itself, right? So for Trevor Connelly, like, what's your read on that dynamism? What's your read on that combination of skating and stick handling? Because for me, it's massive. It's a big part of his game.
It really is. It is the crux of what makes him so special. And yeah, he is so fluid in how he's able to layer those tools into just one very cohesive package where he can whip out any of his high-end tools at any given point, and it's just quite comfortable to do. There's a real comfort with the way he comports himself on the puck, with possession, especially in the neutral zone and offensive zone. And yeah, like he's constantly looking to get the puck towards the middle of the ice. He's constantly like integrating deception into his on puck ability and trying to create those moments of hesitation from defenders, read what, like, if they transfer their body weight one direction and then explosively cut in the opposite direction, which does definitely lend itself a little bit to him seeking out the periphery in order to create, because he is just so skilled that he can create at a high end level from the periphery at the USHL level. And that'll be something you'll have to work on a little bit as he rises up the levels of competition, where creating from the periphery becomes increasingly difficult, and where he'll have to consistently seek out the middle of the ice and the high danger areas for himself. But I think that with the way he reads the game and the way he's already adapted his style to the USHL level, which has already been a decent jump in competition compared to prep hockey where he was playing. I think he'll be pretty fine in terms of the on puck game translating. It'll take a little bit of time, but once he catches his footing, it is just so cohesive. And again, he's not afraid of seeking out situations where he is under pressure. He just loves to have time and space to leverage his high end tools. But there doesn't seem to be an inert aversion to playing under pressure.
Yeah, for sure. I also really like the way that he manipulates speed, right? Like, he's a player who loves to draw in a guy and then kind of accelerate across him. So he's not necessarily, even though he can kind of just go shot out of a cannon through the neutral zone, transition into offense, and just kind of blow past guys and make passes cross ice and shoot from the slot and all that good stuff. He's also really good in transition at kind of like slowing down, then accelerating back up really quickly, and that makes him really unpredictable, really difficult to contain. Especially for USHL defenses. They're having a hard time with him, especially recently. He's got 20 points in his last 10 games. Like, something's working on that end. He had 2 4-point games in a row recently. So, yeah, just good stuff from Trevor Connelly on that end. And, yeah, I think that's a great part of his toolkit, is his ability to combine his brain and his feet in order to kind of just blow past guys, but not necessarily just with, like, pure raw pace. We see that from Michael Hage at times, where he's just like blowing past guys. With Trevor Connelly, there's a lot more intricacy to the way he uses his feet in order to create separation. But the other part of that, the other part of the segment that I want to talk about and focus on is the habits. And with Trevor Connelly, I think this is a main issue, is that his habits on the ice aren't always on point, especially off the puck. I've seen a bit more motor. I've seen a bit more defensive ability from him recently, but it's more an effort thing with him when he's defending rather than a brain thing. Like, he's,
for sure,
when he's defending, it's a lot more like energy, going to the right guys, kind of pushing the pace towards the puck. But his off puck routes, his off puck positioning, and the way that he approaches, especially like board battles and that kind of stuff, like, I don't see the habits, especially along the boards, as something that's particularly strong in this game, right?
Yeah, fully agreed. Like, there are definitely games that I've watched of his where there's an impressive motor behind his defensive engagement, but it's definitely not grounded in high-end reads and like mindfully positioning himself in like the dangerous passing lanes or in like gaining leverage in board battles, lowering his center of gravity, trying to outmuscle opponents in that way. It's more just like cross checks into the side or like the little plays that are make it annoying to play against in board battles, but aren't necessarily creating distinct advantages in those situations.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing is he's not an advantage creator in the way that, for example, Celebrini is, at least not on the defensive side of the
Yeah.
game. Like he's not the type to understand like, okay, this is an opportunity for me to create a 3-on-2 for us defensively, where I can like get into this board battle or kind of maraud above it and kind of find some space. He's mainly just like, okay, here's the puck, I'm gonna go for it. Is that type of thing. But especially, yeah, that also shows up in terms of the decision making aspects, right? Like, his habits aren't on point. For example, the way that he like positions his body in board battles. He's not necessarily looking to establish body positioning before going for the puck. That's one thing in terms of habits. But the other thing is he doesn't really understand when to decide on going into a board battle or not. Like that's another thing with me for him. Like it's one thing to not have the perfect body positioning, the perfect habits when going into board battles. It's another one to not know what board battle to go into entirely. So that's one of my concerns with him. Is like overall, you're looking at a guy who often crowds the puck, often goes to the puck, often gravitates to it. But I don't see as much forethought, especially in his off puck game. His on puck game is very much points oriented. I don't think there's much intricacy or chess there as well, as you mentioned in the first segment a bit. Um, there isn't a lot of kind of forethought or like, okay, I'm going to play a give and go here, get the puck back, move off the puck, find some space, get the puck back, rifle a shot, go to the rebound. Like he's not thinking 5 or 6 steps ahead. He's thinking, what's the immediate way I can create a goal scoring opportunity, which is working very well right now in the USHL. It's just in the NHL, you need to play chess, especially if you're going to end up in the top six, right?
For sure. Like there's definitely an element where he's focused on what is precisely in front of him right now, rather than thinking of what will be in front of him if he takes XYZ steps, right? Like it's not even about
Yeah.
thinking 6 steps ahead with Connolly. It's about unlocking those second and third steps of having an understanding of what actions or inactions could create space and time for himself or for his teammates, when to perhaps not crowd the puck or try to get the puck onto his stick immediately, but rather gravitate into soft ice and allow his teammates to get him the puck and to have that patience
Yeah.
and trust in the players he's playing with to make those plays, right? And I think there's
Yeah.
definitely been a learning element over the course of the season where he's learning that he doesn't have to do every single offensive detail on his own, and that his teammates
Mhm.
can get him the puck in dangerous situations. And I think that's also been part of like his playmaking growth of trusting his teammates as well to finish chances. And those two have kind of gone together over the course of the season,
Yeah.
but it's definitely still more raw than of the other offensive talents that are in this top 15 range. And it's one of the reasons of the on ice game that there's definitely still some aversion overall in placing him in that like top 12 conversation in the 2024 NHL draft.
For sure, yeah. And I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on the off ice stuff because it's still quite muddy, but there's a lot of questions there as well, a lot of concerns with Trevor Connelly, a lot of questions that have gone unanswered, and things that, give cause for concerns. I wouldn't be surprised if he slips out of the top 15. But overall, that's it for our second segment regarding the mental aspects of his game. We'll get into the projection, the upside, and which team would be the best fit for Trevor Connelly in just a second. Before we get into that, though, a quick word from our sponsors over at Sleeper.
We are almost finishing up the NHL season with the playoffs just over the horizon, but there's still time to get in on the action with Sleeper. Sleeper is our number one choice here at the Locked On NHL Podcast Network for all of your daily fantasy hockey needs. That's because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. And all you need to do to win that is to correctly predict the outcome of 8 specific player stats. And you can get creative with those, whether you want to take your swings on the stars of the league like Nikita Kucherov or Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl, or maybe stay a little bit more in line with the theme of this podcast and take those home run swings on the NHL's young guns like Connor Bedard or, I don't know, Adam Fantilli is pretty good at hockey too. The choice is yours with Sleeper. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability.
Alrighty, so let's close things off here with our breakdown of Trevor Connelly's NHL projection, what his upside looks like, and which team would be the best fit for him. And I think we can start off with the projection, because on that side there's some decent elements in his game that could see him become like a bona fide top 6 winger, like an offensive dynamo, top power play guy, the guy you drop the puck to on zone entries for the power play, that type of player, right?
For sure. The upside with Connolly is tremendous. There's definite top line upside if everything hits with him. Like the raw tools are exceptional. The flashes of them being able to layer all of those together into one really cohesive offensive toolkit is also just so enticing. And obviously a fair amount of habits will need to be built for him to be able to attain that type of ceiling, but there is definite point of game upside with this player playing like maybe second line at even strength minutes, but as you said, top power play opportunities, potentially on a team where he's playing the full 2 minutes of a fair deal of power plays as well, depending how strong that top unit would be. But yeah, there's a significant amount of offensive upside in this player.
For sure. I think the other part of that is, if he does end up on a top line, he will need some sheltering, even at the NHL level. Like he's going to be your play driver, but he's going to be the type of player who's going to be playing a bit higher up the ice in the defensive zone. He's going to be playing a bit more kind of that receive the puck and go type of play. He can put in the effort and go back on the back check and make plays, but like I think what would make Trevor Connelly better is to actually give him a bit more composure, a bit more calmness off the puck, where he's again trusting his teammates to do the work for him and not kind of just crowding the puck, trying to outmuscle everyone, trying to outwork everyone. Like adding a step of like sit back and think would really unlock some defensive zone ability for Trevor Connelly. If that's just blocking passes to the defenseman or kind of getting in defensemen's faces as they're getting the puck and kind of timing his routes well, that kind of thing. Like that's the next step for me with Connelly. That can often come with time with prospects, but the willingness to do it needs to be there from the start, right? Like it's one thing to be bad at it and develop it later on. It's another thing to like kind of bypass those things and not get any reps to kind of improve them. So that's my main concern with Connelly moving forward is like how many reps is he going to get of him, developing that ability to sit back, to wait, to think, to trust his teammates to do the work. Like that's a part of his game that I want to see kind of develop a bit further. But in terms of the upside, like you said, top 6 for sure. Top line upside is the highest you could see him get. Especially if those elements improve and especially as he continues to work in a bit more chess to his game. Because if Trevor Connelly unlocks some chess, like his passing is great, his shooting is great. If he improves his ability to kind of like think the play 3-4 steps ahead and like find pockets of space and make the right pass at the right moment to create a chance 2-3 passes down the line, there's definite like point per game upside here, right?
For sure. I think, like, as you mentioned earlier, there's a hyperfixation on being the player that gets the primary point in his game at this stage where he
Yeah.
wants to make the final pass. He wants to be the finishing touch on a play. And there's definitely still a lot of room to grow in him building play incrementally rather than just being the Hail Mary player that he can be at the USHL level, and he has been for significant portion of the season to great success, but that won't translate fully to the NHL level. And being able to build play more incrementally to create smaller advantages on a more consistent basis rather than relying on that slam dunk play at all times is key to him fulfilling that top line upside for sure.
Yeah, less running back, more quarterback is how I would put it. But yeah, in terms of what teams would be the best fit, we've got options. I mean, if we're looking at the 10 to 20 range here as a possibility for Connelly, I don't think the Buffalo Sabres need him. I think they're good on that end, but like if they want to add another like top 6 potential player, he's there for the taking. I also think the Flyers would be a great option. I think the Philadelphia Flyers are looking for more high end upside in their in their pool. It's just, if he ends up, that's what I was gonna say. Like that's gonna be terrible. Because who plays defense on that? But no, for real. Like
you need a Selke candidate at center.
Yeah, I mean, Sean Couturier is there, but he's getting up there in age, so it's like who plays there? But yeah, I think that if they have Michkov on their top line, Conley on their second, with a bunch of like physical skill, physical two-way guys sprinkled in there, the likes of Joel Farabee and those types of guys, I think there's possibilities there to kind of build out a bit more offensive upside in their pool. Other than that, San Jose has the 14th overall pick that belongs to the Pittsburgh Penguins, but Penguins are making a push for the playoffs right now. And Sidney Crosby is a big part of that. If they get in the playoffs, end up losing in the first round, that's still a San Jose pick that I could see them going for Trevor Connelly. But what other teams would you say would be like really good fits for what Trevor Connelly brings and would fill a need in those pools?
The New York Islanders. Maybe not. Maybe not New York. I think any team but New York. Honestly, it's tough. It's tough with Connelly. Like I don't know quite how far he's going to drop. I think there's a likelihood of him being picked as high as like 8th overall and as low as 25th, right? So there's a pretty wide range here. I think if he's available with the second pick for the Montreal Canadiens, that would make a stylistic fit. For sure. Like the Habs need dynamism, but with the emphasis they put on character, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think the Nashville Predators make a ton of sense. They've been very vocal in their desire to take massive swings on upside at the draft ever since Barry Trotz took over as GM, and they showed that last year with swings on Matt Wood and Tanner Melendek in the first round. I think that Connelly would definitely add a ton of dynamism to that level, and I don't think they can necessarily bank on Gustav Nyquist replicating this career year in the upcoming couple seasons, and adding some more dynamic hockey to their lineup would help them in their transition to being a perennial contender, which I think they're well on the road towards becoming at this stage.
For sure. The Islanders, I can see Lou Lamoriello picking Trevor Connelly. I do not know about that.
That was my thinking of probably not.
Yeah, no, for sure. That wraps things up. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment letting us know what you want us to talk about next. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. They've got all your news and updates about what's going on around sports on a 24/7 YouTube channel that you can check out. And make sure to tune in for our next shows and continue our prospects coverage for the month of April. This has been Hattie Kalakash, Director of North American Scouting for Dobber Prospects, with Sebastian Hyde, Director of European Scouting and Head Scout for Dobber Prospects, and we hope to see you next time.